All right, happy Monday. Let us continue on our journey of Erev Shabbos. We talked about where you should light candles. A husband should light a man of a house. Everybody needs to have candles lit. Some of us fulfill our obligation by having other people do it, like a mother or a spouse. But nevertheless, you should still prepare for Shabbos. Even you should even prepare light for Shabbos. Everyone has an obligation to have light prepared. So one of the ways we do that, if let's say you're married and you're a man, is you flip on a switch in a room that you want to leave it on. Really, every room should technically have light on because we said lighting candles is for the honor of Shabbos and for the pleasure of Shabbos. And pleasure means I'm going to have light in a room and I'll be able to see what I'm doing. It's much more enjoyable. So really every room. However, there are rooms where it would not be enjoyable, such as the bedroom if you want to go to sleep. So we don't turn the light on there. But if there's going to be a room like I do myself, there's a room that I turn on the light. Right before I turn on the light, I say I'm doing this for the sake of Shabbos. We spoke about that, and I turn it on. Some say you should even say a bracha. You should say a blessing. We don't do that, but nevertheless you could. Even though it's not actual fire, there's different levels of more acceptable lights for Shabbos. So the closer you are to emulating a fire, the better it is for your Shabbos candles. So, example, you're in a hospital and you need to light candles, so you can't actually light a physical candle. We said you can bring an electric candle. And you should bring an electric candle, and you can make a blessing. We don't do it in Chabad, but you could make a blessing. And the best is that if that candle not only brings light, but actually has some sort of heat. So if it's like incandescent, right? Incandescent brings on heat, as opposed to an LED, because incandescent more emulates an actual fire and heat, like which a candle brings. What else did I want to say? Okay, so another way to fulfill a man's fulfilling his obligation for lighting candles should be to prepare the candles. That is a very common thing husbands do. Common. It's funny because I didn't notice it until somebody do it until like 5 years ago. I never saw anybody do it, and I never read it anywhere. And then I saw somebody do it about at MIT, and then I saw it written, and now we see it all the time. Yeah, the husbands do take part in the mitzvah of lighting candles by preparing the candles themselves. So cleaning out the wicks from last week and putting the candles in. So I try to do that. Okay, now that's with regards to candles. There's a mitzvah to prepare. Actually, a halacha, not a mitzvah. It's not from the Torah, but there's a halacha that you have to prepare for Shabbos. And we prepare for Shabbos. There's two things in preparing for Shabbos. The house should be all prepped for Shabbos. Now, that can be taken care of by a maid, technically, right? And then there's you yourself doing an act to prepare for Shabbos. There's a halacha on you to do something that prepares yourself for Shabbos. So you have to, even if you have a fleet of maids, you yourself have to do something. And we're going to speak about that right now. Because the Alter Rebbe writes that there's a mitzvah. There's actually a halacha tayamer chayim zachu, that you have to taste the food of Shabbos on Erev Shabbos. And there's two reasons given for tasting the food Erev Shabbos. One is that it should be cooked and good and ready for like you're gonna eat cooked and good ready food for Shabbos. Another one is actually for the honor of, so you don't eat, you eat properly. You're gonna want to eat the food. And another thing is in the honor of Shabbos. Another reason why we taste the food on Erev Shabbos is for the honor of Shabbos. Just like a king or a queen is going to come to your house, as the Alter Rebbe, you would taste the food to make sure that it's all, good and ready, all spiced to perfection. We go ahead and we taste the food on Shabbos. Rabbi Vosner was a big Rav, a posek I believe in Eretz Yisrael in Israel. He says that even during the 9 days where we're not allowed to eat meat, except on Shabbos. So Friday afternoon is not Shabbos, right? We're not allowed to eat meat or drink wine Friday afternoon, or even Friday morning, to make it even more strict. He says you could. because it's in the honor of Shabbos. Some people do it, they do taste it, and then they spit it out. They actually don't swallow the food. On that point, during the 9 days, which we'll speak about in 2 months, well, 3 months really, yeah, because we're in ER, Sivan, Tammuz. Okay, so in about 3 months, we're going to talk about the laws of the 9 days, the 3 weeks and the 9 days. So during the 9 days, we don't eat meat or drink wine. So what do you do Motzei Shabbos when you make Havdalah? What do you do with the wine? And it's better to make it on wine. You should make it on wine. Even grape juice is a problem. You shouldn't have grape juice during the 9 days. And for sure you should have wine. So what do they say to do? You should give it to a child. But what if you don't have a child? And what am I going to do? If I have 18% wine, I'm going to give a whole cup to my kid. Sure, he would love it. He likes wine, even dry wine, which is bizarre. But I had a Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, whose father was a big Talmud Chacham, well-known, Vichnin, and he said that my father would drink it, even Motzei Shabbos. He would say Havdalah, and he would drink the wine. So once he told me that, I do that myself, just to put that out there. However, the Rebbe says, now going back to the idea of tasting Erev Shabbos, we actually do not do that. The Rebbe says we don't do that. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't do that. The previous Rebbe didn't do it. He didn't see the previous Rebbe ever do that. And the main thing is, you want to be ready, you want to be hungry for Shabbos. That's why we're not allowed to have a meal midday. From midday Friday, you're not allowed to make a meal. You can't have a big meal from midday Friday until Shabbos, so that you're hungry for Shabbos. I don't know if you guys remember, in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, we even said it's good to fast once in a while, and said the best day to fast is actually Friday. You should fast on Friday. Meaning you should drink. You're not allowed to fast going into Shabbos usually, but you shouldn't eat. You should really limit the amount of food that you eat on Friday. If you do not like meat on Shabbos, you don't have to have meat. You don't have to force yourself to have meat. I know the pasuk says Ein simcha ella b'basar v'yayin. It says there's no joy. The only time you can have joy is if you have wine and meat. That's only if you enjoy it, says the Alter Rebbe. You don't enjoy meat, you don't eat meat. Actually, it's more chashuv, it's more, more chashuv, it's more important, it's more honorable to have fish on Shabbos than meat. And you'll see stories in the Gemara of the way the sages honored Shabbos. They usually talked a lot about different fruits and fish. You don't find it to be so much by meat. Meat was always associated with, not always, but you see it often with if you want to try to understand something or show how wealthy or expansive your mind can be, or how comfortable you are, then you do meat. But in terms of what is more honorable for Shabbos, it was always fish. So, I don't know exactly. Yeah, you guys know the story of Yosef Mokir Shabbos? Should I tell you quickly the story of Yosef Mokir Shabbos? Yosef Mokir Shabbos, he was a big tzaddik. He lived, I don't know how long ago. It talks about in the Gemara. He would always honor Shabbos. He was very poor. And he would save all of his coins for Shabbos. And everyone called him Yosef Mokir Shabbos, Joseph, the one who honored Shabbos. And he had a very stingy and extremely wealthy neighbor, and who would never give money to anybody. One night, stargazers saw in the sky that Yosef, that the neighbor, the stingy neighbor who wasn't Jewish, was going to lose all of his money to Yosef Mokir Shabbos. Just parenthetical. Stargazers, there's a big problem with stargazing. That if you remember from a few parshas ago, a couple of parshas ago, talked about what's the problem with stargazing. There's no actually halachic problem with stargazing and trying to figure out the future, is that it doesn't give you a complete and accurate it doesn't completely and accurately represent what's going to actually happen in the future. It gives you sort of snippets of what it could be. That's why Potiphar's wife tried to sleep with Joseph, because she knew that she was going to have a child that she was going to have a family member that came from Joseph, and it was going to grow up to be a great king. She thought it was her, but it wasn't. It was her daughter. Her daughter was supposed to be the one that was going to marry Joseph. But she She had half information, and the Gemara says partial information is worse than no information. You're better off not knowing than having partial information. And so stargazing, by the way, is problematic because it only gives you partial information. And astrologies and all these different things, even if they are true, and the Rambam seems to hold that. No, the Rambam holds these things are all garbage, but most other authorities say, yeah, it's real. They could be real. Black magic is real. Could be, but it's like, it's so not enough that it's going to cause more harm than good. That's why any movie that deals with black magic is always, it's always problems. Always problems. No, it's not. I'm just joking. So stargazers saw in the sky that this stingy neighbor was going to lose all of his money to Yosef Merkar Shabbos, and he freaked out. And what did he do? Genius move. He sold all of his money and he bought an expensive diamond. Talk about not diversifying. This was the complete opposite. A horrible investor. Must have been inherited wealth. 8th generation. Guy was an idiot. So he put the diamond and he sewed it into his hat, and he slept with his hat on, says the Gemara. Then one day he was crossing over a bridge and a big wind came, blew off his hat, screamed, "Oh no, my hat, my diamond, my precious diamond, somebody help me." Nobody obviously heard him. And the hat sank. The diamond sank too, and a big fish came and swallowed the diamond. One late Friday afternoon, a fisherman caught a fish, and they walked to the marketplace, and they said, "Who will buy such a fish so late in the afternoon?" And they said, the townspeople said, "Go to Yosef Merkar Shabbos. He buys the most fresh fish in honor of Shabbos." They come to his door, and he greets them, and they said, "Would you like to buy this fish?" And he said, "Absolutely. Such a fish would make such a fine Shabbos kosher dish." And he goes and he cuts open the fish as he prepares it, and he sees a diamond and becomes very wealthy. That's the story. So then the sages conclude, those who honor Shabbos, Shabbos will honor you back. And if you ever want to know something interesting just about Shabbos, I lived in Crown Heights for many years, and so you see your fair share of different unique backgrounds, different types of people, and you see people who left the observant life, and they come back just to see their family, whatever. If you ever stop, and they're usually great people to talk to, and you ever talk to them and you say, "What do you miss?" If I talk to them, it's like, "What do you miss most about keeping a frum life, a religious observant life?" And I say, "There's only one thing you can't replicate anywhere else, and that's Shabbos, especially Friday night. You just cannot." He's like, "That's what I miss most." Very powerful about Shabbos. Anyway, okay, so let's keep going. Okay, so the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda bar Ilai used to wash his hands, feet, and face with hot water in preparation for Shabbos. Oh, there's something I wanted to do. I want to talk about. Okay, so you have to. We're talking about the preparations of Shabbos. What you need to do, halakhic obligations, authoritative obligations that you need to do for Shabbos. What are some things that you need to do in honor of Shabbos? One of them is to take a hot shower, a hot bath. Back in the day, they'd only shower once a week or bathe once a week. It was expensive, I think, also, and it was extremely time-consuming. But in honor of Shabbos, you have to go and bathe. The Gemara brings it down. The Rama adds, you don't have to actually wash. It's best to wash your entire body for Shabbos. In the Mishnah Brura, you should be very careful when bathing close to Shabbos, because it might lead to Chilul Shabbos. You might actually be bathing onto Shabbos. So you should try to not necessarily bathe right before Shabbos or shower right before Shabbos, but as close as you can without it becoming a problem. What kind is interesting over here? The Mishnah Berurah brings down what kinds of problems might you run into if you bathe too close to Shabbos? Cutting your hair, like when you're combing. It's a big problem to comb your hair on Shabbos if you have a chance of pulling out hair. Have you ever seen beard combs? Probably never seen them. The bristles, the bristles, yeah, they're very spread apart and they're very loose. They don't do such a great job, but they have it so you don't actually comb out your hair. And you can even do it on Shabbos. You can comb your beard. I don't comb my beard, but anyway. Also, when wringing out the towel, you might have you might cause what's it called in English? Squeezing. You can't squeeze on Shabbos. You can't. What about Thursday? Can I go ahead and do Thursday night? The Mishnah Berurah, can I do Thursday night in honor of Shabbos? Is that good enough? So the Mishnah Berurah says no. It's got to be something that you do. Clearly, it's done for Shabbos, so you have to do it on Friday. Remember, we spoke about cutting your nails. You should cut your nails before Shabbos. However, you should not cut your nails on Thursday because Gemara says they'll start growing back on Shabbos. It'll be noticeably growing back on Shabbos, and it shows some sort of creative act. It looks like, it's like a creative act that's being done on Shabbos. So we don't cut our nails Thursday. The Arizal, at least the Arizal doesn't seem to be bothered by it. He would even cut his nails on Thursday, it seems. And he wasn't even careful about, you guys know about this? You shouldn't cut your toenails and your fingernails in the same day. I think it's mazik. It's like dangerous. I don't know why. I'm not exactly sure why. Sometimes it just says these things and you don't know why. I'm sure there's a reason. Except I know for sure, for a fact, there are those that don't have tuna melts, right? They don't melt cheese with tuna. I do, because you want to know. But the Tzemach Tzedek brings down, it brings down in the Gemara, so it brings down in Halacha, there are those that don't have, just like we don't have meat and fish together because it could give tsaras, it's dangerous. We don't have cheese and fish together because it could, and it says why, we don't know. There are those that do it. So sometimes we have things that we don't know why we do it, but we just do it anyway. I don't, and I see many from religious Jews have a tuna melt. I don't have tuna melts that often, but whatever. Yeah,
Rabbi.
Yeah.
Well, they say that the Rebbe used to eat fish on Fridays, and he would make sure to put fat on it, like butter.
Oh, really?
Anytime he ate fish, he would put butter.
I didn't know the Rebbe did that, but it's cheese that is not so like it's when it's not creamy. Sorry, the problem is when the cheese is not creamy. The dairy, you can't have like a harder cheese, like a more what's the word I'm looking for? Like congealed, not congealed, but like like a piece of cheese is like
a slice of cheese.
Yeah, like a slice of cheese. It's like it's firm. But
so you're talking more like a spread, like a
spread. So cream cheese and lox is okay. It brings it down in the halacha. Gotcha. So like when it becomes, the more watery it gets, then they say there's no problem whatsoever. But it's like when it's actual cheese, like a slice of cheese, something hard. But I didn't know that thing about the Rebbe. That's interesting.
Yeah, my son was the one that told us. That's why we eat fish every Friday.
Oh, interesting.
And we had what do you call it? We had butter to it. The Rebbe did it. If it's good enough for him, it's good enough for us, right?
Yeah. The Rebbe also fasted a lot. Maybe we should do that.
No, don't tell me
that. So what about mikvah? So we have a custom to go to the mikvah. Men have a custom to go to the mikvah, Erev Shabbos, in honor of Shabbos. It says that the Baal Shem Tov would go to the mikvah every Erev Shabbos. So you see that you don't have to prepare yourself. It's not only preparing yourself physically, but it's also spiritually. Now going back to the idea about maids, you have like a lot of maids. I remember I was a shliach in Pittsburgh for a year. And there's a great rabbi over there who I love dearly, Fitcha Itkin. I think he needs a refuah shlema. And you have one. He one day our house was next to his house, and he lived right next to his parents. Have the house that is right next to 770. Those are the Rebbe's shul. The Rebbe's shul in Crown Heights. So there's a house right next to it. Those are the Itkins. The Itkins live there, and he grew up in that house. So when he moved to Pittsburgh, the house right next to the yeshiva became open, and he bought that house. And the yeshiva was willing to pay him like 8 times the amount of money, like crazy amounts of money for that house, because they wanted to expand. And he said no, because I always wanted to be living next to a place of such great kedusha. Anyway, he's wonderful, and his wife is wonderful. Live and be well, 120 years. So anyway, one day I saw him taking out the trash on Friday, and he looks at me. He goes, I have X amount of daughters. I don't know. He's got many daughters. He goes, and they do everything for Shabbos. They cook, they clean. There's no room for me. He says one thing they let me do, they leave for me is to take out the trash. They leave me one bag of trash to take out, and this is my bag of trash that I take out in the honor of Shabbos. So you have to, like I said before, you have to do something in honor of Shabbos. You have to physically prepare the house and get it ready for Shabbos. The house can be prepared for Shabbos, but you have to physically also do something for Shabbos. And where does that come from? Why do we know that we have to actually prepare? We ourselves have to do something that prepares for Shabbos, because it says about the man, the manna that we would have in the desert. It says, the Torah says, "V'achinu," you should prepare it for Shabbos. The manna would come down every morning in dew, and it was enclosed in dew, enclosed in dew from the top and from the bottom, which is why on Shabbos, I know we spoke about before, on the challahs have to be covered. One of the reasons why we cover our challahs and we put it on a challah board is because it should be covered, because the challahs, the two challahs represent the two mannas that we would get on Friday night of Shabbos. So we cover it on top and we cover it below, just like the manna was. Some people have the custom of actually making the bracha with their hands inside the manna, but bracha ta Hashem mamotzi lechem min haaretz, with their hands still covered. I've seen that done. Rabbi Weinberg, I saw him do it. I asked him, why do you do that? A few weeks later, he goes, I do that? I don't think he's like, I don't think I always do that, but he did it one time, at least. He said, I think my father did that. So it says you should take the manna and prepare it for Shabbos. It was given Friday morning. And so from there, we see that you have to do the preparations of Shabbos begin in the morning. That it starts right away from the morning. And therefore it says your preparation should begin right in the morning. And therefore, right after davening, it says for the men, right after prayer, you should begin the preparations for Shabbos. Whatever that means, to each their own. It says, though, if you have a seder of learning, if you learn normally at that time, you could go to that learning and then come home and do some sort of prep for Shabbos. Just want to put that out there. Okay, we got a couple more minutes. Shulchan Aruch says there's a mitzvah to wash your hair. Ramah says that it's also a mitzvah to get a haircut. We see this in general. A haircut, you want to know what an honorable haircut, what is, it says your hair should never look like disgusting. Manuval. That's a strong word. I forgot the exact word. It shouldn't be disgusting. And what's a disgusting? When is your hair considered unkept? After 30 days. So like Mara says. A king would get his haircut, and the Kohen Gadol, if you saw from this week's Parsha, or you will see, you should get a haircut every day. They would get a haircut every day, so they would never look disheveled. The Ramah says you should try to get a haircut on Friday. It's a big money maker for Bachrim in yeshiva. This is very interesting for the men. I would assume it applies for women as well. How many times do you dunk in the mikvah? So there's no number. Yeah, there's no like specific number. Some say Chabad has a custom to dip 9 times. Some say it's 3 times, or any sort of. You should at least 2 times for a man, because for the ball carry, in case you had a seminal emission, and once for what is it? So the Rizal says you should dip twice. So twice. So at least twice. You should dip at least twice. You don't have to. You can dip once if you need to. You should dip at least twice, and then a 3rd time if you had a seminal emission. Some people did 10 times Erev Shabbos. You want to know something funny? When I was in yeshiva, there was you get like some guys who are trying to be extra spiritual, extra holy. It's very frowned upon in a Chabad yeshiva to be extra holy. Usually, we don't outwardly show our holiness. So one time there was I had a friend who was very holy, and he walked up to Rabbi Tzvivel, who's the big. I've told this story. He was a big he was an old chassid, old for us at least. And he walked up and he said, what sorts of kavanot? Yeah, this idea of kavanot, like what you should be thinking. And when you think while you do an act, it unites the spiritual and the physical. Because your mind is much more spiritual, right? It's more ethereal. and then you do an act that's very physical. So what you think about, the kavanot you have, the intentions, what you're thinking about while you do an act, it unifies the spiritual and the physical. It's a big thing in Kabbalah. So he says, what sort of intentions should I have when I go into the mikvah? And Rabbi Tzibel thought for a moment. He said, your intentions should be to come out. I don't know. I thought that was a great line. Meaning, your intention should be to get in and get out. That should be, don't bathe in there too long. Anyway, I thought it was a great line. My friend was laughing very hard. Anyway, so here's his. It says over here, see sources for proper kavanot while immersing. The really, that's because the Baal Shem Tov, the reason why he was asking is because the Baal Shem Tov has a book about what kinds of kavanot you should have when you go to the mikvah. Usually we say is you should picture a tzaddik. That's like the go-to thing. Shulchan Aruch continues, there's a mitzvah to wash your hair. The Ramah says if your hair is long, you should get a haircut. And says the Shulchan Aruch says there's a mitzvah to cut your nails on Friday. And the Alter brings it down. All right, let's stop here. There are those that say you shouldn't cut your nails and your fingernails on the same day because of a sakana. But a woman has no issue, so she has to go to the mikvah. Since she has a mitzvah that night to go to, right? Women go to the mikvah after their period is over. 7 days or 12 days, 14 days. When their period is over, there's a mitzvah to go to the mikvah. And it says, while a person is in midst of doing a mitzvah, no harm, no sakana will happen to them. That's why when someone goes on a trip, very often you'll have someone that will give you $1 and say, give this to tzedakah when you get to your destination. You ever heard that? Shliach mitzvah? They give you $1 to give because I've now made you my emissary to go do a mitzvah. So you're en route to do a mitzvah. And therefore, while you're traveling, no harm will ever come to you. Gemara says most of the times when bad things happen is when you're traveling, while you're traveling. So it says a woman, since she has a mitzvah to go to the mikvah, she can cut both her fingernails and her toenails on the same day. She has no worry about something happening to her. And when you cut your nails, we have the custom of burning the nails when you're done or flushing them down the toilet. Okay, we'll stop here. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I believe you. Just text me if you have any questions later. All right, if that's the case, I wish you guys a great rest of the day.
Thank you.
See you, everybody. Bye.